Hello again, I'm Robert Fithen, and today I want to talk to you about mispressings and misspellings and misprints on record labels and record covers, those unique little rare things you can find sometimes that can either let you know that a record is a first pressing or let you know that you have something that's unique, maybe even one of a kind. Neil Young's debut album has a few different covers. They have the original that doesn't have his name up here, just has the full picture. Some early mixes that Neil Young did not like, using some new technology, so he made him remix the album. But that's not what I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about how sometimes side 2 label can be both sides. Yeah, thankfully one of these plays side 1, but the label, both of these are the side 2 label. Now, thankfully the previous owner of this record actually put 1 there, as you can see, but if you notice, it was actually side 2 before they wrote on it, and the track listings are the same on both sides. But yeah, thankfully that's just a label error, and it is the full album on here. More label errors from the Byrds and a later reissue of their album Turn, Turn, Turn. This happened a few times. RCA did this a lot, but this one's on Columbia, where 2 labels dropped at the same time. So you got the one that's embedded into the vinyl the way it should be, and the other label just kind of half glued to the top of it. Sometimes you can peel these off a little bit or peel the whole thing off, but why would you want to? Why not have a messed up label, a one of a kind, or maybe 4 of a kind or something like that, from the Byrds and Turn, Turn, Turn. Another weird kind of label instance happened in my copy of Santana 3, also on Columbia. You'll notice that side 1 has absolutely no text on it whatsoever. It's a totally blank label. It should look a little bit like that, but instead it looks like that. I've got a couple of Columbia albums where that happens. There's just no text on one of the sides at all. In fact, I've seen a Santana Abraxas that is like that as well. So yeah, no text on there whatsoever. Speaking of labels, you have Whitney Houston's debut, and Whitney looking a little off-center on this particular copy of this. Now, thankfully, the record plays fine. It's just the label that's a little off, but I've actually seen labels that are much more off-center than this, to the point where the label overtakes the music on the end of the side, and you can't even play the end of the song. But this one's not that bad, but definitely a little wobbly from Whitney. It's a wobbly Whitney. Another fun fact about her debut, there's actually 2 versions of it for the song The Greatest Love of All. Early versions feature the piano version, and then later one features the electronic keyboard version of that song. It's not just labels that are sometimes off-center too. I've had a record where the entire pressing is off-center, as you can see here, resulting in a sound. And weird things like that just don't happen with records. Sometimes it happens with CDs as well, like this Caius Blues from the Red Sun. I remember when we got this in college, and you know, I liked Caius. I had their, what was that, gold EP they had on CD. I had that, and was really looking forward to their full album, and put it on the CD player. It was me and like 3 other guys in the room were ready, and it starts playing Looney Tunes music. Now, it had the Caius, you know, the booklet, the Caius booklet. The CD had the, you know, what the CD would look like, the Caius CD. But when you played it, it showed up being, you know, 30 tracks long on the readout, and then it starts playing Looney Tunes, like literal, the cartoons, music. And then it started having like little tracks with like 5 seconds of sound effects, and you know, stuff like that. And we're like, is this, okay, this joke's gone on for a little far here, because this is, you know, the 90s, you got the alternative bands, they're always doing weird, wacky stuff. We thought it might be just a joke for song 1. I think, didn't they have the song that was just 2 seconds long, and it was just called Yeah, and that's all they did was go, yeah. So we thought it might be something like that. But no, the whole CD was nothing but cartoon music and cartoon sound effects. So, you know, I don't think that was, later we actually heard the Caius CD as it was supposed to be heard, and goes, yeah, okay, that sounds a little more like Caius. Back to records, Blues Magoos with Psychedelic Lollipop. Now, I've been talking about kind of rare one-offs, you know, like the Whitney Houston label, or the label on the same label on both sides with Neil Young. That was the kind of thing that happened on 1 or 2 records, and, you know, it was kind of a unique thing. Then there were mistakes that happened on entire pressings, like a lot of the monophonic Psychedelic Lollipop albums from Blues Magoos actually played in stereo. Yeah, the cover was monophonic, the label said monophonic. The label said monophonic, but it was actually a stereo record. Now, That could disappoint fans that, you know, wanted to hear the album in mono these days or something. But back then, it could actually damage the record. Some of the stereo cartridges, you weren't supposed to play mono records on those, and they could actually damage the record. So it was a big deal in those days, is I guess what I'm saying. Aerosmith, funny misspellings, like on their debut. According to the back cover of the first pressings of this, they had a song called Walking the Dig. Yeah, that was corrected in the second pressings and all the rest of the pressings as it should be with Walking the Dog. But first pressings of this have Walking the Dig on the back cover. They also have a nice little blurb about one of the band members getting arrested for having acid. They decided to take that part off as well as fixing the spelling of dog. Probably didn't think that was good look for them or something like that. Deep Purple and their album, Who Do We Think We Are? Apparently, they are a band that knows a woman from Tokyo. I don't know where Tokyo is, but apparently they do, and there's a woman from there. And not only is this on first pressings, this is on later pressings, spelled that way as well. Apparently they didn't think it was a big deal, and just didn't really care that much about Tokyo to correct the spelling on that. Now, there are so many misprints and misspellings and typos on record labels. You could go on and on about those with the list and do an entire video series on that. But just one more that I thought was kind of interesting. Emmylou Harris and her Luxury Liner album from 1978 features a version of the Townes Van Zandt song Poncho and Lefty, but they misspelled Poncho on both the back cover and on the label itself. They spelled it with an O, like the poncho that you wear, instead of spelling it like Poncho the name. So they had to repress everything and all of that. So the first pressings have the misspelling. Now, what makes that interesting is, instead of learning from the mistake, they went ahead and made the same mistake a few years later when Willie Nelson teamed up with Merle Haggard for their version of Poncho and Lefty, which is also the name of the album, and did the same exact thing. Misspelled poncho like a poncho that you wear on both the front and the back and the label. So first pressings have the misspelling, and then, you know, they finally fixed it and spelled it correctly in later ones. But yeah, and if you're wondering, like, what's with the shirt? Why are you wearing corporate words on your shirt? You don't really do that. You're correct. I never wear corporate logos or names or whatever on the shirt. But I thought I would wear this one today just to kind of let you know that this doesn't only happen on record labels and back covers and things like that. It also happens with t-shirts for radio promotions. Like when you order 800 shirts for an event that your radio station has coming up, and they go ahead and decide to misspell the name of the main sponsor. 800 shirts. That was a fun week. Those are some wonderful memories there. The Jimi Hendrix Experience with Electric Ladyland. Now, here is one that I don't know if it truly exists. The rest of these I've been showing, obviously they exist because I've been literally showing you the album. But after all these years of hearing about this one, I think it might just be an urban legend. There was supposedly misspellings on some of the labels that were put out of this album, and it was called Electric Landlady on the label. Now, all these years later of hearing about this, I finally looked for it on Discogs, could not find it, so maybe that was just, like I said, a legend or, you know, something like that that wasn't real, but somebody made up and then it got around. I heard about this in, like, back in the early 90s, late 80s, so I'm not sure if that really existed, but it would be funny if it did. Jimi Hendrix Experience and Electric Landlady. I wonder what she charges for rent? Yeah, okay. So yeah, also, you know, huge bands like Led Zeppelin, they also were victim to sort of typos as well. Their single Rock and Roll, where rock and is just one word, not a major deal. The Beatles, again, you could do an entire video on Beatles misprints and misspellings, but it is a good way to know if you have a first pressing, like this first mono pressing of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. On the label, there's no with on the song With a Little Help from My Friends. It's just called A Little Help from My Friends. So, you know, not a big deal if the word with is missing. Not a big deal of all the misspellings that are on the White Album's first pressing in the US either. It's more about the quantity of misspellings that are on this. There are quite a few. It's the Beatles. You would think there'd be some quality control, but no, on early pressings, Raccoon and Rocky Raccoon is misspelled. You've got Good Night as one word. You've got Revolution number 1 and Revolution number 9 instead of just 1 and 9. It just goes on and on. Again, I don't know who, I mean, it's the Beatles. You would think somebody would have paid a little closer attention to that. Abbey Road, too. Not a misspelling, but a misprint. I just showed this in a video, but I'm so happy with the sound quality of this and so glad that I finally got this. A US or a UK first pressing of Abbey Road. Sounds spectacular. And one of the ways you can know you've got an early pressing of this, the misaligned apple on the back. The apple is kind of moved over there, was not supposed to be. So yeah, even huge bands like, you know, Led Zeppelin and the Beatles getting misprints. Here's a later one from their album 1962 to 1966, the compilation that came out in 1973. Of course, you also had the Blue Album. When it was re-released on Capitol, you had red labels and blue labels. Unless you have these ones from Jacksonville, and I believe another plant did this as well by mistake, and came out with blue labels for 1962 to 1966. So if Beatles collectors don't have these, well, they better get them. Their Beatles, collection is not complete without a nice blue label version of this. And again, you could go on and on and on about all the Beatles mistakes, but I just got one more. The very first U.S. album introducing the Beatles on VJ Records. Yes, this was out before Meet the Beatles. It's basically the U.S. version of the Please Please Me album with a couple of tracks gone and a couple of alternate tracks. This started out with the songs Love Me Do and P.S. I Love You. On later versions of this, those songs were replaced by Please Please Me and Ask Me Why, but they already had some of the back cover slicks made up, and so they just kept the original track listing on here, you know, Love Me Do and P.S. I Love You, but when you played the record and saw the label, it was actually Please Please Me and Ask Me Why on some later versions of this. And there's also a version of this where the cover is just a bunch of ads for other VJ records as well. So, and yes, this is not a bootleg or a counterfeit. There's George's shadow. There's no missing part in the word honey and all that good stuff. So yeah, I have a original of that. So yeah, Beatles. I mean, you could go on and on and on about the Beatles mistakes and misspellings and left off words and whatever. But I think we've done enough Beatles for right now. Let's move a little more current. Or slightly more current. Whisky Town, Stranger's Almanac is the album. Now this goes beyond just a misspelling or just an apple that's not centered or whatever. I mean, I think you can live with, rock and roll with no space between rock and the word and. But this is an actual mispressing, a mismastering, as one of the sides on this album actually repeats the last two tracks from the previous side. So two of the songs are on here twice. And it definitely was not supposed to be that way. It's not listed that way in the track listing on the back. So you actually, if you play the album, like it should be played, you're going to hear two songs twice in a row. And that also bunches up the side. It has like 8 songs on it instead of 6. So, the grooves are a little tighter. So it's probably not as good of a fidelity as it could have been. But yeah, Whisky Town, Stranger's Almanac, going beyond just misspelling a word or something like that and actually mispressing the album. And that's the kind of thing that happens lately. I think people are kind of over misspellings and things like that. And with spell check or whatever, it doesn't really happen that much anymore, I guess. Or people are maybe just paying more attention. Now it's more serious things. Like sometimes the complete wrong music will be on the album. That's what happened with a few albums like Beyonce's Lemonade album that came out. People got the album out, played it. It had the Beyonce cover, obviously, the Beyonce labels on the record. Then when you played the record, you actually, instead of hearing Beyonce, heard a punk rock band called Zex. I believe they were from Canada, and their album was called Uphill Battle. So you're expecting Beyonce, and you get Canadian punk rock. I wish I could have seen the looks on some Beyonce's fans' faces when that happened. I believe that was a UK thing. Another thing that happened is U2's Songs of Innocence. That was released on vinyl for UK Record Store Day. Again, U2 cover, Songs of Innocence, had the label on there. And then when you played it, instead of U2, you heard Tool's Opiate EP. Which, in my opinion, would be an improvement. But, I guess if people are wanting U2's Songs of Innocence, they're going to want to hear Songs of Innocence. But yeah, you expected to hear that. It was a Record Store Day thing, too. So people may have stood in line for it or whatever. You get Tool's Opiate EP. But yeah, wasn't Songs of Innocence the one that was downloaded to everybody's phone for free? And man, there's that album cannot get a break, I'll tell you that. Pink Floyd, now a band from England, but this happened in the US. Another Record Store Day fiasco was when A Saucerful of Secrets came out for Record Store Day a few years ago. And people got that home ready for some Pink Floyd, ready to chill out with some classic stuff from the 60s and just, wow, trip out. No, you get techno music and a 12-inch single of techno music, which visually you could probably easily see that this is a 12-inch single. But again, it had the Pink Floyd label on it. It had the Pink Floyd cover, Saucerful of Secrets. And no, it's techno music. And yeah, that's what you got. And so that kind of thing is happening. I don't know if it's a lot or not, but you could probably make a whole video out of the times that's happening. And again, these aren't little like misspellings or something like that, or somebody got credited and their name is wrong, like on the Bruce Springsteen Born to Run. That's another one where the first pressings have the producer's name. His name's John, and there's no H in his name, and they put an H in his name, and little things like that. No, we're talking like the wrong music is playing. Or you get 2 copies of the same record in a double album. That happened recently with a Kiss record that they were re-releasing on their website only. I think it was a Live 3. Not for sure on that one, but I'm pretty sure it was a Live 3 double album. Came out with 2 of the same record instead of 1 and 3. There was a country artist, Lainey Wilson, her album called Bell Bottom Country, double album. A lot of them came out with 2 of the same record in there. And some people got a 2 of record 1. Some people got 2 of record 2. So you were supposed to send it back and then they send you the right record, but it's somebody else's record that they probably sent in and they're trying to match them all up. What a mess. What a mess. A little more quality control at the record plants. Probably fix all of that. But yeah, so what are some strange things that you've seen on the back of albums? Misspellings, misprints, kind of rare one-offs that you may think you have the only one that's like this? Like the double, the same label on both sides or a double label on there or something like that. Let me know in the comments. Like I said, there are so many. I could make you could make an entire channel of nothing but videos about this kind of thing. But I thought I'd just share some of the few that I have today in this video. So yeah, mispressings, misprints. Let me know in the comments about ones that you've experienced. Once again, I'm Robert Fithen. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will talk to you again soon. And yes, the shirt is misbuttoned. Thank you for noticing. Don't tell the trolls though. Let them comment on it. Act like I didn't do it on purpose. That'll be fun.